Chromosomes. Little strands of nucleic acids and proteins are the fundamental genetic instructions that tell us who we are at birth. Most people are born with 46 chromosomes, but each year in the United States, about 6,000 people are born with an extra chromosome, making them a person with Down syndrome. If you've ever encountered someone with Down syndrome, you know that they are some of the kindest, most joyful people you will ever meet. They truly have something extra. My name is Lisa Nichols, and for 30 years I have been both the CEO of Technology Partners and the mother to Allie. Allie has something extra in every sense of the word. I have been blessed to be by her side as she impacts everyone she meets. Through these two important roles as CEO and mother to Allie, I have witnessed countless life lessons that have fundamentally changed the way I look at the world. While you may not have an extra chromosome, every leader has something extra that defines who you are. Join me as I explore the something extra in leaders from all walks of life and discover how that difference in each of them has made a difference in their companies, their families, their communities, and in themselves. If you like this episode today, please go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen and leave us a 5-star rating. Before we get started, I'm excited to share that my book, Something Extra, is now available. It is rooted in the remarkable spirit of our daughter, Allie, and the heartfelt conversations we've had on the podcast. You'll find wisdom and practical tools to ignite the leader within you and uncover your own something extra. Visit somethingextrabook.com or find it at Amazon or in all major bookstores to order your copy today. I'm grateful to have Caren Merrick on the show today. Caren is a tech founder, private equity advisor, and the author of the upcoming book, The Power of Insight. Well, Caren Merrick, hi, sweet sister. It is so good to have you on the Something Extra podcast today. I'm so delighted that we can make this work.
Thank you. You're my favorite podcast. I want you to know I've left you a 5-star review. And every time I listen, Lisa, I get a new insight. I get something valuable that I would not have gotten otherwise. So thank you.
Well, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. And Caren, the deal is I do too. Every time I have a guest on, I feel like I'm learning and I'm growing. So, and I know that this is not going to be any exception. There's so much to you, girl, though. I mean, we could do like a 3-hour podcast and not cover Caren Merrick. There's so much good stuff with you, but you and I know each other. I always love to go back and tell our listeners how we meet people, right? And so you and I know each other through an amazing organization that you and I have both come to love, and that's CEO Forum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's such a great fellowship of women in business. We are all very mission driven, and we want ourselves, our teams, and our companies to flourish. And I'm so grateful that we're a part of it, Lisa. I wouldn't have met you otherwise.
I know, because you're in Virginia and I'm in St. Louis. The chances of our paths crossing probably would not have happened otherwise. But I'm very, very grateful for the CEO Forum. So Caren, oh my goodness, we're going to talk about all this, but you have lived in boardrooms, you've lived in basements, you've lived in government offices, and you've been in the startup trenches. When you look at this season in your life, how do you describe you to yourself?
Oh, wow. That is such a great question. I have never really thought about that, but I do believe that we are all given these opportunities for a reason. And it's part of how we fulfill the purpose that we have in our lives. And so I look back on all of these opportunities, and it wasn't like when I was a little girl, I said, oh, I want to do a startup. I want to be a cabinet secretary. I want to write a book. But I will say that I did from a very early age want my life to count for something. I really did. And it was part of my faith journey about how I became a Christian is I looked at the world and I thought, what's going to really last? Everything is so passing and temporary, but I want my life to count for something. And so this is what it's all led to. And now I'm in a new chapter where I hopefully will be able to use all of those experiences in a way that helps people flourish.
Oh, that's so good. That is so good. I was just telling you about my friend Paul Hood. And at the end, his something extra. And I said, Paul, nobody's ever said this, but he said, the something extra is for you to know that this is not about you. None of this is about you,
Oh,
Yes. I mean, that's precisely what you just said, using what you've been given, the experiences, the education, everything that you've done in your life, Caren, to help people in your sphere flourish. And that could be people in government, that could be people in the tech startup, I mean, people in the community, right? So
Yeah.
it's really not about us, it's really about what we give back to the world and to others. So I love that. Well, tell me this, what do you feel is the most life-giving piece right now for you in this chapter of your life, because you have turned the page on another chapter, which is so exciting.
Oh, indeed. You know, what's so fascinating to me is to realize that everything that has happened so far is bigger than I could have ever imagined. And that means that my future is going to be the same way. If I look back on my life, every single time there was a challenge, that it gave me something. It gave me an
Mhm.
insight, which is something that I'm really fascinated by right now. And we can talk about that more later if you'd like. But I really do. Just getting back to sort of like knowing yourself and knowing who you are. I am happiest when I am helping either people or businesses or organizations flourish. There's something so life-giving about playing a part in that. And honestly, every time I get a new experience or I'm doing something, or even when I'm traveling with my husband or sailing with my husband, I think this is really so much fun and I love it. But how can I use this to help
Yeah,
someone else? Like, what insight can I gain? What can I do in all of this that's going to help someone else flourish?
that's so good. That's such a wonderful question to ask ourselves daily, whatever it is that we're doing, right? So, how can you use that? Well, I want to get into this kind of like you're growing up. I mean, you were the first woman or first family member to earn a college degree, but you've got three other siblings, right, Caren?
Yes, I was the first woman in my family to earn a college degree. And what's remarkable to me is that as I consider my parents, they were very, very young when they got married. Like my mom was 17, my dad was 20. And because of that, they both worked and they had children four children, like all in a row. By the time my mom was 26, she had four kids. And yet they had the presence of mind to give us a solid, stable upbringing. There was a lot of love and adventure in my family. And our parents, because they both worked, they asked a lot of us. And so all four of my parents' children are
Mm.
entrepreneurs. And I think that's so fascinating because my father he was a utility company lineman, and every night after work, he would go to college on the GI Bill. So he put himself through college with the GI Bill with four kids in the house. And then he went on to get his MBA. My mom worked full time and she was a big support to my father. And what ended up happening is because she was working, she'd say, "All right," to her two oldest daughters, my sister and I, she would say, "I want you to have dinner ready and the house clean and your homework done by the time I get home from work." And so you have to figure it out. And I am so grateful to her and my
Mm.
father for giving us a work ethic.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, because that is remarkable. I mean, how many families have four kids and they're all entrepreneurs and in business? I mean, that's I think that's probably not very common.
Right. And I
So,
have to just credit our parents for asking a lot of us and really being
mm.
engaged in what we do. The other thing my mom did is she got a job at the local high school so that she would have all of the same holidays off as we had.
Oh, that's awesome. So you had her presence
Yes.
a lot too, which is really wonderful. Gosh, I love that. I love that. What did because I read this, what did your mom say to you all the time about college?
Oh my
That,
goodness, yes. So my mom would say a couple of things. She said three different things that were so important. She said to me, "God is and was and always will be." That's a really important thing to say to a little kid. And then she would say, "You can be anything you want to be if you work hard enough." And but the third thing she said, which was very specific to me, is she said, "Of all my children, Caren, you're the one who's going to college." And I'm grateful that she did because I think I really took that to heart and I thought,
Mhm.
"Oh, I need to honor that. My mom is saying that to me. That's part of my destiny and don't take that lightly." Now, what ended up happening is after 23 years of marriage, sadly, my parents got a divorce. And so there was not the financial means for me to go to college. So I set out on my own and started to support myself. And so I went to college a little bit later, but I did go and I did the degree in 3 years.
Yeah, I know. I read that you didn't start until you were 25. There's a lot there, but I want to camp out on this for just a minute. The words, I was thinking when I was reading that, I'm like, the power of words.
Mm,
The power of words. I mean, your mom kind of spoke that into you, Caren, and that kind of became a little bit of what you expected from yourself, right?
yes.
So, talk about this because I know that you had this pivotal story because you didn't really have the money. You just said your parents weren't able to financially help you. You had to put yourself through college.
Mhm.
But I love this that you went on the press your luck.
You read
So,
that. Yeah.
tell that story.
Oh my goodness. So I had actually been out on the mission field first. I had such a profound experience when I was 20 years old that I thought, oh, the whole world needs to know about Jesus. And I was just so, it transformed my life. And so I'm out on the mission field and I'm in a missionary training with Youth with a Mission in Lausanne, Switzerland, because I had had high school French and I loved French speaking countries.
Yes.
And so we end up going to a place called Labrie with a man named Francis Schaeffer. And Francis Schaeffer said, you missionary kids, we would go every Friday night. And he'd say, you missionary students need to realize that the whole world is a mission field. And we need people like you in education and in business and in every kind of industry that you can imagine.
Everything, right?
So,
Yes.
so I had sold everything to go on the mission field. So I come back thinking, all right, he's right. And I felt that was my leading and my calling is to go back, find a way to go to college and then go into the world. And so I joined this wonderful church, and there we had a great friend in this church. All of my friends actually were at Fuller Seminary. And so there was this wonderful man named Kent Norrell who eventually became a pastor. And he went on Press Your Luck and he said, Caren, you should do that too. And I said, oh, I did not have the confidence to do that at all. And he said, look, I'm going to help you understand how this works. So I took the test, passed the test, and then called me in for an audition. And he said, this is what you do in the audition. You clap for everybody else. He said, you just show up with energy.
Oh,
So I was
that's
selected
awesome.
for the show, and then I'm on the show, and I won. I won at that point in my life. I won $11,500, which was exactly the amount of money that I needed to go and put myself into college and pay for my rent. And it was enough to get me started. And it was as if the good Lord was saying, no more excuses. You can do this.
Oh, that's so awesome. I love that story so much. I love that story so much. I think you started in community college, but then you ended up graduating from UCLA,
Yes,
which is
I
a
did.
really good school. Oh, I love that. Well, do you think that maybe I mean, because this changed the trajectory of your life, right? It really did. Probably your time with Francis Schaeffer. I remember like what was his one book I read many years ago? This is how you are to live.
How
I
then shall we
think
live? Yeah.
How then shall we live? Oh, such an amazing book if listeners want to pick that up. But I'm sure like the time at Liberty and then this, I mean, truly changed the trajectory of your life. So I kind of want to get into this. In 1996, you co-founded Web Methods
Yes.
uh, in your basement
Yes.
with Philip, who is your husband, and he was from Australia, I think. But I there's so much here that I want to talk about. But you grew this into one of the most successful IPOs in history. I mean, I think
Yes.
you guys were $200 million company, 1,100 employees, and then ended up going IPO. And we'll talk about that. But tell our listeners about Web Methods. And I thought it was really funny, Caren, because I'd read where you had told Philip, even on your date, now listen, I'm going to be starting a company. I just want you to know. Okay. And he goes, well, I want to start my own company too. So you guys
Exactly.
were very like-minded. You said you really hadn't dated anybody that was that, I guess, confident that that's what they wanted to do with their life. So that's so cool. And of course, I think this is why you and I connected so much, because Greg and I were the same way. We dated and said, even in high school when we were dating, hey, what would it look like if we could build a company and that company could do well and then we could do a lot of good in the world? That was kind of our mindset. And we started our company together in 1994. So you guys started in 1996. Tell our listeners about Web Methods. What did you guys do? What were you hoping to accomplish in the world?
Oh, well, thank you. So, yes, you're right. On our first date, we talked about starting a company. I was on my path to becoming an entrepreneur, which is a story in and of itself. Uh, and so life, so first date, I thought, oh my gosh, this man also wants to start a business. I've never heard that before. And that's why I kind of like to float the idea as a little qualifier, if you will. And then 7 months after that first date, we were engaged. 4 months later, we were married. And so on the anniversary of our first date, we were married. And then about a year after we got married, we had been talking about, starting a business. And I had started a business. I had started the business that I was already on my way to starting when we first dated, which was a market research and marketing and communications company. And America Online was my first client, and things were going well. And then we found out that his mom had a terminal illness, and
Mm.
he's from Australia. And so we knew that we needed to go spend time with her, because we knew that her days were even more numbered than most of us know. It's actually a blessing if you know in advance. And,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so we moved
Mhm.
to Australia, and we both ended up working at the same software company. As I was director of marketing, he was the VP of engineering. And then his mom went into remission. And so we were only there for a year and a half, and his mom ended up living for 4 more years, which was wonderful. We had
Oh,
her for
bless
4 more years. And then while we were in Australia, some important things were happening on the internet. It was really exploding. And so we talked about this, and my husband had this idea about how to use the internet as a platform to integrate huge supply chain systems and huge internal systems, huge IT systems, Lisa, which you would understand. Before that time, they were so siloed. All of these, finance was siloed from
Yes,
HR, was
HR. Yeah.
siloed from manufacturing, was siloed
Mhm.
from everything else. And so my husband invented a way, and he patented it, to use the internet to do that. So I made the first, so I started looking for investors. I made the first friends and family call for investors to my father, and he immediately invested. And then we set about just going throughout our friends and family, former bosses and whatnot. And we had enough money and we felt confident. So we came back, and then we came back to the United States, to Virginia, which is a very great place to start a business, as I can tell now,
Yes.
especially after being the Secretary of Commerce and Trade here. And so what ended up happening is we bootstrapped that company.
Mm.
And we did what a lot of companies do, which is we built a smaller version of the product. We got a couple of early customers, and then we needed money to continue to expand and grow. And we went across this entire country looking for venture funding, and we were rejected. And so we were reaching this cliff of death, running out of money, credit cards are maxed out, and we needed we were about ready to shut down, when there was an amazing venture fund from Virginia who invested $2 million into our company. And so from there, we did hire the engineers that we needed. We
Yes.
made our product even better. We hired more sales reps, customer service reps, more marketing people. And then Goldman Sachs wanted to invest. And then Michael Dell wanted to invest. And then we ended up having a bidding war, if you will, between Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs as to which bank would take us public. And in the end, it was Morgan Stanley. And on the day of our IPO, it was the most successful software IPO in history. And that's because we had a shipping product. We had
Yes.
customers when it was, we were B2B before it was cool.
That is so awesome. Yeah, I think I read like your price per share was like $13, but at the end of the first day when you went IPO, it was $300 a share.
Yes,
That's
it was. That
really
was so wonderful. I mean,
remarkable.
so many people and companies and families and investors prospered, and we were grateful, because when we took my father's first investment, I said to my husband, we both said, and then my brother invested. We said, my father and my brother have invested. We can't lose their money, or else it's going to be really hard at Thanksgiving.
Yes, exactly. Very awkward. Very awkward at Thanksgiving. Oh my goodness. Well, we've been there too. I mean, Karen, we bootstrapped our company, to start with. I mean, we got a $30,000 home equity loan because these people, that we place are very highly paid, right?
Yes,
And the last thing Greg and I wanted to do is for people to be calling, going, okay, when am I going to get paid? We wanted a regular sequence, that they were going to be
yes.
paid bi-weekly, and come hell or high water, we were going to make sure that our people were paid. And so, yeah, I mean, it's, but the thing is, and it sounds like you guys did the same thing. I mean, you know, um, maybe if we'd taken on some venture funding, we could have grown faster, but we were just slow and steady. And we were just, making sure that, our cash flow was good, watching that. And, because sometimes I see companies fail because they take on too much too soon.
Oh, Lisa,
And your
yes,
overhead can kill you.
that's
The
right.
overhead
Yeah.
will kill you.
And I will say that one of the observations that I've made is that there were a lot of other companies that eventually got into the same space as us that got millions and millions of dollars of venture capital. But that sometimes money covers a multitude of bad decisions.
Yes.
And this idea of losing your focus on what you're supposed to be doing, and then it's just not as noticeable when you've got a lot of money in the bank, whereas with us we didn't. And so we had to, it drove ingenuity and innovation, I believe.
Yeah. No, I could not agree more. Well, talk about then. I want you just to touch on Web Methods, the foundation that you became, I guess, the CEO of. I mean, talk about Web Methods, because I know the foundation, because I think you were teaching your people even how to write grants in that, and how
Yes,
to, yeah,
yes.
which was really amazing.
Well, it's so funny because what's interesting to me is getting back to what I said about my drive. It must be a gift from the good Lord, because I could never feel happy knowing that I was prospering if I didn't know that other people could prosper too. And when we were thinking about starting this business, and we would take these long walks on the beach in Australia and we would pray, and we said, if this company is successful, we're going all in on the communities where we are, because it's not enough for our company to prosper. Our company is going to be in a
Hmm.
physical location or locations, and we
Give
really want
back.
to invest. Now, Lisa, we both come from very modest families, working class families. My husband's the first person in his family to get a college degree. I'm the first woman. We had no concept for philanthropy or any of this, but we just knew that we would have a role to fulfill, that we would have a
Hmm.
responsibility. And so what happened was, on the day we went public, my husband and I looked at each other, and there were obviously a lot of things going through our minds, but we said, we need to act on this. And so we immediately set aside the 10% tithe of our own shares. And then some of our board members set aside some shares. And we started a private foundation, but we named it after the company. And then we looked around because we did not know how to run a foundation. We did not know much at all about philanthropy. And so I looked for who was best in class in our region, and they mentored us. And I did interviews, and they came in and uh, talked to us about it. And then we also then had we left it open to our employees. We said, does anybody want to volunteer and be on a grant team? And a lot of people did volunteer to be on grant teams. So we had a variety of different organizations come in and teach us what the economic conditions were in our regions, who would come in and teach us about the world of nonprofits, they came in and taught us about how to make grants. And what we decided was, we formed a board. I was president and chairman of the board. We hired a full-time executive director. We had four members on
That's
that
good.
team of the foundation. And we decided that we wanted to make grants in areas that were essential for nonprofits, but that were not always made. So we would do the infrastructure. We were an infrastructure company. We felt like software infrastructure. So we would help nonprofits with their IT systems or their accounting systems or some professional development.
Yes.
And what we really wanted to do, Lisa, is help people achieve their potential through education. So we supported a lot of education nonprofits because our experience, our personal experience had been that education changed everything.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I love that you did that. Well, gosh, Caren, we got lots and lots and lots more to talk about, but we do need to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with my friend Caren Merrick on the Something Extra podcast.
Hey there. In a challenging business climate like this, savvy leaders look to technology to find an edge. This can mean the difference between staying ahead of the curve or playing catch-up. It's time to collaborate with the highly skilled experts at Technology Partners. Our team of technologists draws upon decades of experience for your project, with each bringing a passion for solving problems and a track record of success. How can we help you overcome your biggest technology challenges? Visit technologypartners.net to book a free consultation with one of our leaders.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Something Extra podcast with Caren Merrick. Oh, my goodness. So much to this woman. So much to this woman. From 2022 to 25, Caren, you served as Virginia's Secretary of Commerce and Trade under Governor Youngkin. And I'm just going to read a few of these things because I know you wouldn't say these about yourself. But, she managed a budget of $3 billion, 13 different agencies. When you left, you had raised $140 billion in new capital investment across key sectors, data centers, energy, advanced manufacturing. 15,000 plus high-wage, high-growth startups were launched. Remarkable. CNBC recognized Virginia as America's top state for business. That was in 2024. You guys had a new trade office in Taiwan. You accomplished a lot, Caren. What was that like for you?
Well, what is amazing to me is the team, starting with the governor. He's a businessman. He is so good at building teams. And I have been his friend and I've done work with him over the years. And being able to work up close with him as a partner in his vision for Virginia was remarkable. And I really did love his vision and our mission. And it's interesting, though, coming out of the private sector, the
Yes.
governor had just come out of the private sector. For him, it was his first government job. It was my first government job. And I would say about half of the cabinet came from the business sector, and it was our first government job. And so we had to rely on people who had been there before us and would be there after us, like all of the agency, the teams there. But I will say that after the first couple of months, it's pretty intense. I mean, I moved to Richmond a month before inauguration, and we had a lot of transformation that we wanted to do. And we also know that in Virginia, the governor is limited to one term, 1 4-year term. So we wanted to get 8 years worth of work and
in 4 years.
achievements and progress and transformation done in 4 years. But after the first couple of months, it was so fascinating. And I sat back one day and I said, "What is this like? What is this like? It's not exactly like anything I've ever done." And I realized, Lisa, it was like 3 things. It was like working for a startup, a merger, and a turnaround, all at the same time. And once I had that framework, I thought, okay, now I know what to do. Now I know what to do. With the folks, the startup folks, it was like the new political appointees. We were the startup team. We had never worked together before. I had worked with the governor, but none of us had worked together before. So I employed some of those startup. The merger part, we came into a lot of, tens of thousands of people who were employed by the state of Virginia, who love the Commonwealth, who are mission-driven people. And we were a merger because we were coming in, several hundred of us, and we were starting to lead.
Mm-hmm.
And then the turnaround is what every governor wants to do. Every governor has a vision of what they think they need to do to be better. And the governor has appointed a cabinet to help him, not only to help him shape his vision, but to implement his vision and to lead.
Yes. Well, 15,000 startups in that period of time, Caren, is just really remarkable. But I know that that's your heart too. I mean,
Mhm.
you started by saying, I want to invest, I want to see people, want to see organizations, if I can help them flourish and grow,
Yes,
that's what is life-giving to you.
it is true. And the other, for me, it was such a tremendous honor to have this opportunity because I had been an entrepreneur. I have started businesses, multiple businesses. I have had to write that paycheck. I have had to do what you and your husband Greg have had to do. I've had to make personal sacrifices in order to make payroll.
Yes.
And I've had to listen to my customers, and I've had to pivot, and I've had to learn from failure and those things. What I realized, and I started a foundation and helped to set that up. That was another startup. But what I realized is that whether it's in the private sector, in a startup, in the nonprofit sector, and then in government, there is a framework that
Right.
you that
That
that if you use, you will flourish, your
mhm.
team will flourish, and your organization will flourish. And it's that framework that really matters. And I believe that we collaboratively developed a framework there in the state government that we hope will last now that we are, the end of the term is just weeks away.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, so let me ask you this, because I know we had said before, education is really important to you and Philip. I mean, that's you were investing in that through your foundation. Were you setting up boot camps for these startups? Did you have some sort of education that you were providing to them, Caren, during this time? I mean, there may have been a an initiative, from
Yes.
the governor's office to
Yes, yes. And so in the state government, it's fascinating because you have agencies that by their design access federal funding. And so of my 13 agencies, the premier agency that is engaged in the startup ecosystem is called the Virginia Innovation Partnership Corporation. And there were hundreds of millions of dollars that were coming down the pipeline, unlike at any other time in Virginia's history, that every state was getting this pipeline of funding. And so what we did is we channeled this funding into partnerships with organizations that do seed funding, that do boot
oh,
camps, there's a whole ecosystem of mostly nonprofits that will help entrepreneurs. And so we partnered with them because every good strategy requires good partners, right? And
yes,
so and we needed those partners because we didn't have
right.
the team in the administration and at the Virginia Innovation Partnership Corporation. What ended up happening though is in my role, I was vice chair of this organization for nearly 4 years. And so I was able to work very closely with the CEO to come up with a strategy and align that strategy with the governor's vision, with my vision, and also with the opportunities that existed in Virginia. And that was part of the 15,000 startups.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Well, and as an entrepreneur starting out, you've got to have somebody like you, Caren, that's helping you navigate the system and find out who are those partners out there that you can collaborate with.
Exactly.
To get
Yeah.
the training that you need. And sometimes I think that's kind of where there's a gap because the entrepreneur doesn't really even know where to go. So I love that you guys had it structured that way. And yeah, that's I mean, I'm sure that's why you guys won America's top state for doing business, in 2024, which is amazing. Well, let's talk about this because I know this is something you're very excited about, and I'm very excited for you. You got an upcoming book, and it's titled "The Power of Insight." How do you define insight, Caren? I would be very curious to hear your definition, and why do you think it's so rare?
Insight is that it's an insight is it's like it's an intuition, but it's really clarity. Insight is
Hmm.
clarity. It's not a moment of brilliance. It's a discipline. It's something to be cultivated. And it's clarity whether you on something that could be an opportunity, recognizing an opportunity, or it could be clarity on solving a problem. and it might be a problem that you're having with a team member. It might be a problem you're having with your business growth. It might
Hmm.
be something unforeseen that happens to us every day. And the reason that I believe insight is so important is because insights are all around us, Lisa, but sometimes we miss them.
Yes.
We miss them for a variety of reasons, and we don't need to be missing them. I believe it's just this discipline of learning how to cultivate, recognize, capture, and apply insights. And so I'm developing a framework for that.
That's wonderful. Why do you think we miss them? I think sometimes we're just moving too fast,
Yes.
Caren, and we don't take the time. Like you took the time to sit in your office and going, what is this like? Now, what am I really doing? And that's when you came up with, well, it's a merger, it's a, turnaround. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, sometimes we don't take the time to
it is.
really just spend time thinking.
Lisa, it's the time, it's the power of the pause. It's asking questions. I do believe the first and most important part of cultivating the discipline of insights, of capturing an insight, is self-awareness and self-understanding. That famous that famous analogy of putting the oxygen mask
Yes,
on first when you're on a plane.
yes.
Because when you understand yourself, then you are coming from a position of much greater strength, and you're also recognizing, do you do you have a bias? Really knowing yourself. And something that fascinates me is that a lot of great leaders do assessments. They do, they'll do
Mhm.
Clifton Strengths, which I'm a big
Yes.
believer in that, or the DISC, or there's any number of assessments. But I believe that it's more than that. And I recently spoke at Harvard. The Harvard University has the Flourishing Summit, and I was grateful to be invited to speak there. And I spoke on self awareness as essential to leadership. And part of that
Mm.
has to do with, I don't think we spend enough time thinking about our own biases. For example, when I was, I knew this going into this job as a secretary, that I am allergic to bureaucracy, Lisa. I don't like bureaucracy, and yet I was going straight into a
Right into
bureaucracy.
it.
And so
Mhm.
sometimes I would sense this coming in myself where I was speaking to someone who wanted something from the government, and I had to really pause and say, you know, uh, tamp this tamp this down. Pause. You're allergic to bureaucracy, and so you're just not listening, or you're maybe not as empathetic as you could be right now. That's one example. But also, I've come to realize that all my strengths have a shadow side. And I see this all the time. I see this in leaders that are above me. I see
Mhm.
this in my peers. For example, when you think
Yeah.
about when you're really confident, the shadow side is you can become arrogant or dismissive. If you're a visionary, you might be impatient or undervalue execution. When you are optimistic, you might avoid things, or overpromise. And so when I think of self-awareness, I think of it like that. And I also think of it, and this is something that it really challenges me, which is when you think about a week that you've had that was a tough week or a big week, one question that really causes me to stop in my steps is, what is it like to be on the other side of me? What was
Yeah.
it like to be on the other side of me this week? And I would ask my team when I did my weekly one-on-ones, I would say to them, is there anything I could be doing more of or less of for you to succeed? And so that's part of self-awareness. It's bringing other people in. And by the way, not every direct report even has the confidence to answer that honestly.
Right. Yes, yes. I mean, but you need those people in your life that will speak truth.
You do.
But
And courage.
Karen, I love that you said that because I have said that so many times. I love that question. And this can be not just in business, this can be with your family. What's it
Mm,
like to be on the other side of me?
mm.
And I just think that's a really good question for us to ask ourselves constantly, because if we answer that honestly, there's some times where, it's, boy, I come across too harsh
Yeah,
or,
I agree. There's another one that there's another two that I want to share with you. One of them is what do your team members know you care about most? And then the other one is, what feedback do you most resist and why? That's the
Mm.
hardest one for me.
That's I know, and I say it all the time, feedback is a gift, but, it's not always easy to receive it, right? But goodness, we need to. How are we gonna do better if we don't know better, right, Karen? So
Exactly, exactly. So when you're thinking about, how do you cultivate an insight or recognize an insight? Part of it is just doing your own little inventory and saying, is this an insight coming, or, or am I resisting it? Or am
yeah.
I making something up just because it makes me feel better?
Right? No, that's good. That is good. Well, and I just right now, and you and I have talked a lot about data, right? So we do a lot in the data space. Sometimes I feel like, and I mean, organizations can be drowning in data, people can be drowning in data. There's so much coming at us all the time, Karen. I will never forget this. Somebody that you and I both know and love, Cheryl Batchelder.
Mm,
I'll never forget her saying one time, sometimes you don't need more input, you just need to act on what you already know.
I love that insight.
Isn't that gold? I know. See if you can quote her in your book. No,
I'm just gonna interview her. I think I
yeah,
will
there
ask
you
her.
go. Sometimes you don't need more input, you need to act on what you already know. But, there's so much stuff coming to us all the time. How do advise leaders to choose wisely? Because, I mean, I know for us, like in our business, even, oh, we could be doing this over here. We could be doing that. I think that's another trap that sometimes leaders and entrepreneurs can fall into, trying to be all things to all people. And we know that if that's your reality, there's going to be a dilution there
Yeah,
where you're not
yeah.
going to do anything well. But how do you advise leaders to choose wisely?
Uh, Lisa, what you've described about yourself is it's a positive that you're mission driven, purpose driven, generous. You want people to flourish and you want your customers to flourish. And most leaders should aspire to that if they don't already. And most of the leaders
Mhm.
I know, they do.
Right.
And recognizing that and accepting that about ourselves is like getting back to my first point about self awareness. That matters. What I've also discovered is that, and one of the first exercises I did with all of the agency heads is ask a very simple, essential question, which is, who is our customer? Who is our customer? Who are we serving? Or who are our customers? We may have different types of customers. We also need to understand if we have a hierarchy of customers where there's some that have a different sort of priority. But
Mhm.
who is our customer? There were so many agencies that couldn't answer that with clarity. And what happens, or startups, same,
Yes. Yes.
or startups, nonprofits, government agencies. And this is because often mission driven people do have scope creep because they don't want to say no to anybody.
Right.
And
Yes.
people who are in public service, like the state government, they're there to serve. And yet, if you cannot define that, then you are going to have duplication of effort. You're going to have a bunch of subscale initiatives, which I discovered. I discovered that different agencies had similar programs that were not within their scope or their mission,
Mhm.
but they
Mhm.
just wanted to help. But that
Sure.
doesn't help if
Yeah.
you are not
Yeah.
spending your resources wisely. So the first
That's
question
right.
is, who's my customer? And the second one is, what problem are we solving for our customers?
Mhm.
Really important to know this. And back in the day with web methods, we were doing this software solution for enterprise software for global 2000 companies. And yet there were a lot of little .coms coming around that wanted to use our software. And we said, we have to say no to this customer because that's not the kind of customer that's going to build this business. It's not what we do best. It's revenue, but it's not the kind of business that we want to invest our time and talents and product development into. And Lisa, that was a very important distinction for us because a
I
lot
bet
of
that
those
was.
companies went bankrupt.
Sure.
And so by
But
saying,
they were trying to serve everyone,
who's
right?
not
I
our
mean, it's
customer? Like,
so important.
yeah, who's not our customer?
Mhm. Yeah, because yeah, that's so good. I mean, and Karen, in all transparency, we've been there where, there have been times where we've like, even serviced a little startup that has no money and then we become the bank. I mean, it's like, oh my goodness. Yeah, that is so, so important to have clarity around that, I believe. So that is so good. Well, let me ask you this, if a leader, and I know that you're still working on it, but what is one insight principle? Would that be it? That like if you left the reader with one insight principle from your book, what would it be? And I'm not putting words in your mouth, but maybe it's discernment. I don't know. Discernment between good and best.
Oh, my meta insight would be make recognizing and capturing insights a discipline. Take it seriously. And not only should you take it seriously, model it for your teams. Get them involved.
Mhm.
You can actually say to them in a meeting, let's work on this together. Let's ask better questions. Let's create the space. Let's make it safe for people to have insights or to question things or to say, or even to ask. I mean, I would work through these 6 or 7 questions. These were on my whiteboard as the Secretary of Commerce and Trade. Who's our customer? What problem are we solving for a customer? Where's the leverage? How do we measure it? What is the best message and channel to reach our customer? Because at any one of those points, any one of those questions, you can go off the rails and
Absolutely.
you see it happening.
Mhm.
And especially like what's the best message and channel? It's like, oh, we're all over the map on how we're going to get the message out, when really you can be disciplined about that. But there are insights about how to do that.
Yes. Yes, well, and we don't have time to get into it because we're running out of time, Karen, but I know you were very specific about that with web methods. And I
Mm.
told you I was so intrigued because, I mean, I'll just say it, but you got a lot of media involved. You would have a client talk about web methods and what it had done for their company. And then, all of a sudden, it's showing up in a, Business Insider or a magazine.
Yeah.
And then somebody else is reading about it, and so you were very intentional about how you went about doing that. So I think this book is going to be so amazing. When can we expect the book to be out? What are you estimating?
I'm thinking late summer, actually, and I will be
Okay,
posting some content on a regular basis on my LinkedIn. And
good.
so
Yes.
I will be sharing some of these ideas.
Yeah, so I would just encourage our listeners, go and follow Karen. Go and follow her because she writes. I didn't even get into this, but I know you write for entrepreneur.com, Success Magazine. You write for a lot of media outlets as well. So I've got lots more questions. Well, I know faith is really important to you.
Hmm.
Faith is very important to you, Karen. What you've consistently said that business can be a force for good.
Hmm.
And I was going to ask you, where does that conviction come from? I think I know where it comes from, but why don't you tell our listeners?
Oh, business is a force for good. Obviously, I believe as a Christian that the ultimate entrepreneur and creator is God, and we're created in God's image. But I will say, I had a hunch about this, about being an entrepreneur, and my grandfather was a small business owner, had been an itinerant farmer, ended up becoming an electrician in the boom days in California, always humble. But what I saw firsthand, Lisa, starting this business in my basement with my husband, bootstrapping it along the way, seeing it, a couple of cliffs of death and all of that you learn from the things that didn't work and the things that did. But then, Lisa, as it grew, it was extraordinary what a company can do. I saw people so energized about using their gifts and talents. I saw people so energized about working as a volunteer grant maker. I saw this company not only solving problems for businesses, but going into the community. We had people
Mhm.
coming up to us over the years saying, "We bought our first house because of this company, because
Yes.
you believed in us and you hired us. We send our kids to college because of this company." And and so I was so energized by that. And since this company went public, we led it for many years. We stepped down. It was sold to Software AG. Then Software AG had it for many years. Then they just sold it to IBM for
IBM.
$2 billion. We had
$2 billion.
exited it, but this was something that we were part of an amazing team over many, many years. And so over the years, this company has done so much. And a lot of the people who worked at the company that we had while we had it and we were leading it and serving it started their own businesses, some of them more successful than Web Methods. And so I believe by the grace of God, we help to foster this environment of innovation and ingenuity where people would have courage and step out. And this is what the marketplace does. Now, obviously, not every business treats its folks well
Right.
or does that, but I do believe that far and away most companies do, and that the whole world is looking to the business community
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
solutions.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so good. Well, I'm grateful to be a part of it, and I know you are too. Well, I've got a little lightning round for you, rapid fire questions here. Is there a word or a mantra that guides you today?
Oh, that's fascinating that you say that, Lisa, because on any given day, there are probably multiple words. But I would say that the word flourish just captures my imagination.
Mhm. Mhm. Isn't that a great word?
Yeah.
I love that, and you've mentioned that several times, and you know about the Christian Business Women's Breakfast that the Rooted Sisters here in St. Louis produces. That was our theme for this year.
Oh my
And
God.
I had not talked to you. I had not talked to Tony Towns Whitley or anybody about that. So isn't that amazing? But flourish was our theme for the year.
Mhm.
I know that you got two boys, Hudson and Jackson, and I read this about you and I loved it. And I have never done this until last night, Caren. And my kids were like, "Mom, what are you doing? You play words with friends." With them for connection. And so I'm getting on there. I never played Words with Friends, and I'm getting on there last night. And Paige, our middle daughter, she goes, "Mom, what are you doing?" She goes, "I've never seen you play games on your phone." But I love that. Hey, is there a leadership lesson or two that your boys have taught you, Karen?
Oh, yes, definitely. Their love is unconditional, by the way, which I'm grateful for. I would say that our kids have taught me how to listen better. And the
Mm,
reason that they've taught me how to listen better is because I needed to learn that lesson. I didn't always appreciate it, but they gave me feedback, either either direct and gracious or
yes.
otherwise.
Yes.
And gosh, we need our kids to teach us. We need
Mm,
our kids to teach us. And then
yeah.
I guess the only other thing I would say is that um, through the listening, I think I've helped them do what my parents helped me do, not as much as I ask myself this question a lot, but I've helped them figure things out on their own by not
Yeah.
jumping in. Like my parents would, they'd say, "You get this done," and then they go away, and then they come back, and it better be done.
Yeah, well, and to your point, it was out of necessity, right? I mean, your dad was going to school at night and working, and your mom was working, and they needed you guys to stand on your own 2 feet,
It was a
and,
team. Yep, it was
as
definitely
a
a
team,
team.
it's all for one and one for all. I love that. I love that. Well, I've gotta talk about this. I know one of your favorite pastimes is sailing.
Mm,
I mean, this is kind of a funny question, but, it's called Glad in It is the
yes.
name of your catamaran, right? Have you figured out or, have you like set back, Karen? Because I'm sure you have, talking about the parallels between sailing the open sea and a startup.
Yes. Yes,
There's some
yes.
parallels there.
Oh my gosh, and by the way, we did not grow up in a family with boats at all, and our kids ended up going to a sailing camp which is a whole other story we'll talk about sometime,
Yeah.
Lisa. And because they went to sailing camp, we got a little catamaran, and then we just tried this, and then we tried that, and then we ended up owning a catamaran. And it's a great catamaran. It's got 4 cabins in it, plus a crew lives on board, and we charter it out. And yes, it is a business. It's definitely a business, and it's like a startup. But even more than that, there are so many passages in the Bible about the ocean and the sea and God's grandeur, and you have to rely on God to be a sailor. I mean, you have to really, you have
Yes.
to all get certified, but you're out in the open sea where there is so much you cannot control, and you see the power and the glory of God out on the open ocean.
There's some uncertainty there. We did a sailing trip years ago with our attorney and his wife in the Chesapeake Bay, and we'd gone to Annapolis, and it was so choppy. I mean, really, after about 30 minutes, our attorney's wife, dear friend of mine, she goes, "You gotta take me back to the shore." So we went to the shore. But just recently, when we were in Florida, our son Jordan said, let's rent a sailboat, and we did go sailing. We had a captain and everything, but we don't know anything about sailing. It was so relaxing, Caren. I said, I can see myself doing this more. It was so nice. And then Jenny, who I know that you've met, they've got a little catamaran and they love to sail too. But I think that's so cool. Well, gosh, I got to ask you, this is called something extra. What is the something extra that you believe every leader needs?
I have to say that I think it's insight. I think it's the understanding that if what you want is clarity and wisdom and discernment, you have to cultivate it. It has to be a discipline. It's almost like a spiritual discipline, Lisa. You have to have, and it needs to be in a way that works for you, right? Everybody processes information and comes at it slightly uniquely because we're all so fearfully and wonderfully made. But I suggest a framework, and and my book will be about suggesting that framework because it's really essential. If you're a generous leader, you're a mission-driven leader, you want to flourish, you want your team to flourish, you want your company to flourish, it's essential that you cultivate the discipline of recognizing, capturing, and applying your insights.
Yeah. Well, that gives me hope because the operative word there is cultivate, which basically means anybody can do it, but you've got to have the intention, like you said, in the discipline to make it a priority, Caren.
Yeah. And Lisa, they're there. The insights are there. And there's some insights that are even within you. There's like this treasure, right? That's in you.
Well, I cannot wait for your book, girl. Get to working on it because I know it's going to help people. So this has been so fun, Caren. I've absolutely loved every minute with you. Thank you so much for making the time to be on the show today.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you for listening to today's show. Something Extra with Lisa Nichols is a Technology Partners production. Copyright Technology Partners, Inc. 2019. For show notes or to reach Lisa, visit tpi.co/podcast. Don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you listen.